size of firms. It will be very difficult to rely and to achieve all this and to expand apparel production if the firm size is uniform or less than 10 workers, because the issues that we discussed. I mean, you need certain scale in order to be able to produce and to connect with global buyers. So these are the remarks or concluding remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gladys, for the presentation. Now we break for tea, and we have a panel discussion on apparel, job creation, trade, and development in India, followed by that.
Are there any questions? Gladys, would you take questions? Yeah? Would you? If there are any quick questions before we break for tea? Any comments, questions on the presentation? There is a panel discussion that will happen in about 15-20 minutes. But in case there are any questions for Gladys, very quickly, please be brief. Yes.
You have indicated that the wages are increasing in China. So is the case in other countries. In India also the wages are increasing. During the last 6 months, the wages have increased by, say, 37% or so. So the position is similar, whatever is happening elsewhere, Although it is said that the China is vacating the space, but it is vacating, but going, they are setting up their industries in other countries. So cumulatively, if you take, the space is not getting vacated, only they are going to the different countries. Now, the technology also plays a very good part. When the wages are increasing, there is every likelihood that the entrepreneurs or the industry will try to use more and more technology. More and more technology means less employment. Although, the industry can provide, a lot of employment to the low-skilled workers as such. But when the technology, when it becomes unviable because of the increase in the wages, and the wages are almost 30% of the product cost or the FOB cost. So in that situation, the goal that we are trying to achieve, that the higher employment, may not materialize. Your comments.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I am S.C. Kapoor from the Association of Synthetic Fiber Industry, and I wish Mr. Amitabh Kant was here when you have asked us to raise some questions. The question which is very important for increasing the exports from this country is the fiscal structure. There has to be a neutral fiscal structure as it is all over the world. In fact, here we have a discriminatory structure. Man-made fibers, you mentioned about the man-made fibers exports. Man-made fibers are discriminated against. There's a huge excise duty, so which cannot be sen-wetted. It is only up to the man-made fibers. When it is woven into the yarn, there is no duty at that stage. So our fabric, which goes for exports from this country, so that is a cost to the fabric manufacturer. Now this issue is very important, vital. From China or Southeast Asia, you have about 70% of the man-made fiber exports in the fabrics, garments, and about 30% natural fibers. But in this country, the man-made fibers constitute only 20%. So these are the discriminatory structures, duty structures, which need to be attended to if you want to increase the exports. Yes, EU is vital. EU is vital, and I think that agreement, free trade agreement, must be signed at the earliest.
Thank you. Are there other questions before I turn to Gladys? We'll take one more. Could you please be brief? Thank you.
Dr. Halima from Jamia Millia Islamia. Ma'am, thank you very much for this presentation, but one thing I just wanted to know, if there had been an alternative methodology evaluating the same, what would have been the results? Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Gladys, Martin. Well,
So thank you for the first question. Certainly, I mean, from discussions with global buyers, as you said, yes, China is diversifying. Some of the investments that we see in other countries are also coming from China to reallocate. That's a reality, and that's happening. And also, it's a reality that as the industry improves potentially its productivity, also will be accompanied by higher wages, no? Because really, when you look at the wages compared the unit costs between India and China, they are strikingly different. So there is a room to continue improve productivity while not hurting the labor force. The other point I want to make is that production in South Asia and also in India is still in the first stage, which I mentioned. I think there can be room to move upward, but that will require a coordinated effort in order to bring the skills that are needed in order to move further into the value chain. So in that regard, I think in the case of South Asia, it will continue to be labor intensive while the training is provided for managerial skill, other skills to be able to move forward into the value chain. And then definitely, I guess it's a discussion in terms of the men fiber, and yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add into.
GST might take care of some of that.
Yeah.
Let me perhaps
Yeah, sorry.
add a bit on all three questions. First, on the raise of wages in China and other wages raised in you raised a very valid point. These exercises change one variable, keeping others constant. Now, there is one aspect of what you said that is fully captured in the exercise, which is the substitution between capital and labor as labor becomes more expensive. That is taken into account. In other aspects, it's a static comparison. All countries are growing, wages in all countries are growing. But I think what remains very important is the pace at which China is changing its labor market. There has been a very deliberate decision in changing the model of growth towards domestic demand, also to change formality, the degree of formality of the labor market. China had a couple of labor laws. Of course, India has 44, but China had a couple of labor laws. Now they have 6, but they have 6 that are very important, and they are instructing their trade unions to be instrumental in that enforcement. So part of the transformation towards the domestic market that China is having is based on this much higher consumption power, and I think that dwarfs what we can be seeing in other countries. It's not to say, I think you raise a very valid point. And in fact, what the model shows is that as exports move to other countries, the demand for labor increases and wages also increase in the other countries. So it's not like they remain static. Part of the exercise that Gladys was showing is that if India was to seize this opportunity, there will be more employment and there will be higher wages. It will be part of the effect will be on levels of employment, part of the effect will be on earnings of workers. So in a way, I would like to connect that with the last question before coming to the man-made fibers, which is these are just methodologies to illustrate a point. One should not take any of these numbers like at face value, or it will be 19%, but is to assess the plausibility and the orders of magnitude. For sure, other methodologies could have given us different results, but we suspect that the big picture will be quite similar. There is an opportunity, it can be seized. To go back to the point on man-made fiber, which I think is a very important one. In many ways, it's interesting to look at why Bangladesh has been successful. What are the elements of the success of Bangladesh? How come a country that is in many ways less developed, less good logistics, more challenged infrastructure than India, done so well? And the story of Bangladesh is almost a combination of a series of accidents and very opportunistic measures. the accident, one very important initial accident that has to do with skills is how exports in Bangladesh started. This was the time of the multi-fiber agreement. Bangladesh had a quota, and Korean industrialists realized that it was convenient to produce from Bangladesh. And so Daewoo gets into an agreement with DESH in Bangladesh, and 175 people with relatively high skills for Bangladesh go for 9 months for training in Korea and Daewoo, and they learn the business. They really learn the business. They come back, they all leave Daewoo, they all leave DESH, and they all start their own companies. So the acquisition of skills at the managerial level of Bangladesh started almost by that accident of a training that didn't work out for Daewoo in the way that was initiated. But then there were a couple of very smart things that Bangladesh did. One of them was back-to-back letters of credit, which allows an exporter, as soon as you get a contract, to be using that to get finance. But the other one, and here is where the import of raw material comes in, was the bonded warehouses, which is a way to cut through customs. You import the material you need, but as if it didn't go through the country. It just stays in areas where is controlled. And they did it for cotton. Cotton has no problem, but they didn't do it for man-made fibers. And so they are in the same situation as India, which shows that there may be ways, if it's very difficult to open up a market for imports, at least to open up for people who are into the export business. So in many ways, the doing business environment of Bangladesh, if you look at our doing business indicators, is not better than India in any way. But they have found these clever ways around the bottlenecks to go around. And perhaps this is something that India could consider. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll close this session now and we'll continue this. One of the things that struck me in Gladys's presentation, which I guess there will be some discussion on, is that, and Martin's point about orders of magnitude, is the output elasticity of employment is 0.17, but much lower than other countries. And I wonder if this has to do with the kind of initial conditions of higher kind of capital intensity of India's garment or textile industry because of various reasons relating to labor law. So I think this is something which is, while as Gladys said, there will be employment creation, but the orders of magnitude compared to other South Asian countries is still less, and I wonder if that has anything to do with the initial conditions. And but I think we'll have this discussion in the next session, because there is a panel discussion that will happen. But let me take this opportunity to thank Gladys and Raymond for the report, and also for giving us the opportunity to launch it. ICRIER is very happy to collaborate with the World Bank in this initiative, and of course to do kind of related research, as I said in my opening remarks, related research in the future on calculating what I think are extremely important adjustment costs that happen with domestic workers as a result of trade liberalization, greater integration, and with mega regionals this will only become much more important. Thank Martin, Amitabh and Ono for being here for the report launch, and of course our entire team in ICRIER, Arpita and our entire team who will meet during the course of the day for making this event happen. And thank you all of you for coming, and may I invite you for a cup of tea before we engage in some more kind of stimulating discussion post tea break. Thank you very much.